of the things which I'm very impressed with was that we tied up at that point in time with business world. Because if you look at how you can connect design to business, was not really by writing only in design magazines, but you needed in real business magazines taking ownership of promoting design. And I remember that Tony, who was the editor of the magazine, when I met him in the very populated office place in ITO, of where most of the companies, our magazines and newspapers are having their offices. I went there many times in that period to convince a business world that why don't we introduce a Design Excellence Award. It was not initially called, Design Brilliance Award as it later became, or Design, various terms were used later. But initially it was just simply called the BWNID Design Excellence Award. And this was, I would say, a very major, major transformation, because just probably it had something to do with that conversation which I made with Mr. Mursali Maran in his room when I took over. And you will find that many products of, Michael Foley, for example, who did the thin design edge watch with Titan, and many of the packaging designs and many of the jury members were very carefully selected. Incidentally, Naushad was in that jury at that time, is now currently the chairman of NIFT. So we had a completely different approach which was brought in, and it went on to build the Design Excellence Awards, became very big by 2006, and you can see that it in fact led to, in 2008, you can see Mr. P.R. Oberoi, for the hotel designs he has done being put on the cover, and Design Brilliance Awards. So by the time you will see, the term changed from Design Excellence to Brilliance, because the editor had by the time changed to Jahangir. And Jahangir wanted that, excellence is becoming passé, because of in search of excellence, and the companies have not really done well post a certain period, and brilliance may be a better idea, and we did go in for that kind of a approach. So what later I began to see was that even sectoral, people started taking up those design competitions, and you can see Jindal Stainless Innovation Award 2007, and many such later architectural awards. Probably they existed before, but they started connecting design into the architectural format or architectural award ceremonies, and it began to catch attention. And in the subsequent period, I think the Business World Design Excellence Awards sort of died out, and it has been taken over by the CII's award function as a part of the Design Summit. But it was not without difficulty that these things happen. And you can see that, for example, Outlook in 1998 were writing about hip, hyper, hollow, about the designers' mutinies which happened because of the copying allegations and various issues related to IPR. Why I brought in IPR is, in this whole process of connecting fashion and design, the biggest impediment was who owns IPR. For example, an institute, when a student comes out with a breakthrough design, from a Neil Foley or a Michael Foley or a Sushant Jaina or whoever, or Paul Santip, and so many students who do excellent work. But then the institute feels that it has been the place where it happened, and it should get a share of the returns. The student feels that a little bit that the institute is trying to take away too much, and that is where the incubator plays a role, by which you transfer that into a context in which it can become a commercial proposition. So this, if it does not happen, it has still not happened in the fashion industry, unfortunately. Even today, after 30 years, there is no fashion design business incubator, which should have happened. Even for a design business incubator, it happened only in 2003. So you can imagine that fashion has been without those kind of structural support, by which they were exposed to too many attacks from media at some point in time, which disappointed many people from time to time. So why I alluded to this media issues was, the intellectual property regime was not understood by the designers, and the costs associated with registering the designs was too much, in the eyes of many designers. After registering, if it was copied, the punitive action by the civil or criminal system, judice system in the country, jurisprudence system in the country, and the fines associated with the same were not really a deterrent in terms of preventing people who wanted to just be like a Dick Costa in New York, who used to send people to New York and get it all copied, and in 2 weeks' time you bring it out as copied fashion. Now, it is a big thing when you look at the evolution of Indian design, Indian fashion, to the connecting world of business. It has never been understood because, first of all, designers by and large are emotional people who depend a lot on their creativity to give them the outcomes in the form of new designs. But the interpretation of the need of the designer's need to the business needs, or the consumer's need, how they are interpreted by the team to give a brief to the designer, all this became complicated issues. And on top of it, who is the actual owner of the design creation and how the intellectual property is to be. I remember a major symposium happened in Chile where I had dealt with this subject. This is called the Design Symposium, Protection of Designs in 2011 in Chile. And the WIPO conducted this, this particular conversation where the designers were trying to present after the World Intellectual Property Organization came into being, and both the design registrations and trademarks became a subject of intense discussion in the design area. The business aspect of design and connecting to the business world, and designers having intellectual property right, all this has started getting much attention. The famous case of Ritu Kumar versus the copying people became a matter of discussion. I remember presenting this as a case study in Geneva. And there is a need for understanding this because most of our designers have not been documenting their intellectual property actually created. And therefore, when they want to be bought by a large company for making a big business, I remember J.J. Valia once discussing a particular topic with me. On this, I had told him, unless you really bring in a great amount of intellectual property built around, and then you are able to get a brand value, then only you are able to really make use of your name or brand value to the best effect. It has happened by Ralph Lauren, it has happened in Versace, it has happened for Armani, it has happened for Calvin Klein, but it has not really happened in that context for the Indian designers, mainly because the intellectual property regime, how to utilize that to build your brand value and how to take it to businesses of a certain proportion have not been really developed sufficiently. Though design education has been happening, I would comment that the design business education has not really been developed sufficiently, and it has affected the development of this subject. So in a manner of continuing this discussion later, I would say that the biggest challenge for fashion design or design institutes is not teaching the design. It is yesterday we were seeing a model which a Malaysian institute was telling us, for example, that the student is going to be evaluated only based on the commercialization of the particular design in the field, and their entire evaluation is based on that particular journey and how it gets sold in terms of numbers in the marketplace. It's a very challenging model, but that is how the entrepreneurship. Our design institutes need to travel a long distance. Similarly, the design businesses have also tried to travel a long distance to understand, to incubate ideas, to take this forward, and the design policy, which needs to now come in, needs to focus on these things a great deal more than it did in the past.